Right, so you wanted to know more about this whole Adlerian psychology thing.
Yeah.
So we dove deep into the courage to be disliked,
Okay.
to find, the key takeaways
Right.
for all of you out there who are curious about it.
Yeah.
Now, this book, it's not your typical self-help book.
Yeah.
In fact, some of the ideas are,
Yeah, it can be a little that.
yeah, a little bit out there.
Yeah.
But that's because Adlerian psychology,
Right.
which was developed by Alfred Adler in the early 20th century, really challenges a lot of conventional thinking about,
Psychology in general.
yeah, psychology and how,
About human behavior.
yeah, human behavior works. And it's actually considered
The third giant.
the third giant of psychology,
Alongside Freud and Jung.
alongside Freud and Jung, but often overlooked.
Right.
And maybe that's because some of his ideas were so radical and so ahead of their time that we're still catching up to them even today.
I think that's true.
Like, Adler believed that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
It's a bold statement.
It is a bold statement,
It is.
but when you really think about it, Adler believed that our fundamental motivation
Yes.
as human beings is to feel a sense of belonging,
Uh-huh.
like to feel it's okay to be here.
Absolutely. To feel that sense of belonging and significance.
Okay, so even if I'm stressing about deadlines at work
Right.
or feeling insecure about my appearance,
Sure.
Adler would say that all boils down to how those things are impacting my relationships.
Absolutely. Because even in those situations you just described,
Yeah.
that stress you feel about the deadlines, maybe it's tied to wanting approval from your boss,
Oh, interesting.
wanting to meet their expectations,
Yeah.
or maybe you're worried about what your colleagues will think if you don't meet those deadlines.
Right.
And that insecurity about your appearance.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps that's connected to a desire to be accepted or loved by a potential partner, or wanting to fit in with a particular social group.
It's all,
It's all interconnected.
it is all
Yeah,
interconnected.
yeah.
Okay, that's starting to make sense to me.
Sure.
But what about those feelings of inferiority,
Yeah.
like a lot of us experience?
Yeah.
Are those always connected to other people too?
Adler had some fascinating things to say about that.
Okay.
He believed that feelings of inferiority are actually completely natural
Yeah.
and even a driving force for growth. Think about a young child learning to walk.
Okay.
They feel that gap between where they are, crawling on the floor and where they want to be walking upright like the adults. And that feeling, that sense of inferiority, it motivates them to keep trying, to keep striving until they achieve their goal.
So it's not the feeling itself,
Yeah.
but how we respond to it.
Precisely. It's when those feelings of inferiority turn into an inferiority complex
Right.
that we get stuck.
Uh-huh.
Instead of motivating us to grow, we use them as an excuse not to change, to stay comfortable.
I've definitely known people like that.
Right.
The friend who's too awkward to date,
Yes.
or the coworker who always complains but never applies for a new job.
Absolutely. And that's where another key concept of Adlerian psychology comes into play.
Right.
It's called teleology.
Okay.
And Adler believed that we're all striving towards a future goal, and our current behavior is actually shaped by that goal,
Okay.
even if we're not consciously aware of it.
So it's not about digging into the past then.
Not in the way that traditional Freudian therapy might.
Right.
Because Freud focused heavily on those past experiences.
Right.
Adler flips the script. He says, let's focus on the present goal, the desired outcome.
Okay. I'm starting to see the difference.
Good. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a friend who's constantly canceling plans, refusing to leave the house.
I know a few people like that.
You probably do.
Yeah.
A traditional psychologist might want to delve into their past, search for a trauma or some childhood experience to explain this behavior.
Okay.
But Adler would ask a different question.
Okay.
What is the goal this behavior is serving right now,
In the present.
in the present? Maybe it's to avoid social anxiety,
Okay.
or maybe it's to get attention and sympathy from loved ones.
Oh, interesting.
You see, the focus shifts from the why to the what for.
So the past doesn't matter in Adlerian psychology.
It's not that it's irrelevant,
Yeah.
but Adler believed that dwelling on the past too much keeps us stuck.
Right.
He often used this analogy of a doctor explaining a cold.
Okay.
The doctor might say, you have a cold because you were exposed to a virus,
Right.
but does knowing that actually help you get over the cold?
No, not really.
Exactly. What matters is what you do now to feel better.
Rest, fluids, all that.
Right. Rest, drink fluids, take medicine. All these actions are directed towards the goal of getting healthy.
Makes sense.
So it's not the cause of the cold that's important.
It's the goal, the desired outcome.
Exactly.
Okay, that analogy really helps. But how does this teleology approach explain, emotions?
Yes.
Like anger.
Like anger, sure.
Not like we choose to be angry, right?
Well, even with something as seemingly spontaneous as anger, Adler would argue that it still serves a purpose.
Okay.
He believed we use emotions as tools to achieve certain goals in our relationships.
Wow, okay.
So, for example, let's say you're on the phone with your mother,
Oh.
and she starts criticizing your parenting choices.
Oh, boy.
You feel that surge of anger, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But what's the goal of that anger?
To get her to stop.
Maybe it's to shut down the conversation, to protect your ego, maybe even to manipulate her into backing down.
It's like a defense mechanism almost.
In a way, yes.
Whoa, that's like a whole different way of looking at anger.
It is, and this is just the beginning of what Adler had to say about human behavior.
Oh, boy.
We haven't even touched on his ideas about the desire for recognition, the separation of tasks,
Right.
or the courage to be disliked.
The courage to be disliked, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, this is already challenging a lot of my assumptions.
good. That means we're on the right track.
So before we move on to those, can you give us a little preview?
Of course.
Like, what are some of the counterintuitive things that Adler had to say about happiness?
Well, prepare yourself. He argued that we shouldn't live to satisfy other people's expectations. He also believed that true freedom actually comes from being disliked by others.
Okay.
That happiness is directly tied to the feeling of contribution.
Okay.
And that we should all have the courage to be normal.
The courage to be normal. Okay. Freedom from being disliked.
Yes.
Courage to be normal.
That's right.
This is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's a lot to take in, I know. But that's why we're diving deep into these ideas.
All right, let's do it.
Get ready to challenge your assumptions and explore a whole new way of thinking about what it truly means to live a fulfilling life.
Buckle up, everybody. It's about to get real.
Yeah.
All right, I'm still processing that last bit about freedom and being disliked.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, but I kind of want to hear more about it.
It is a challenging concept,
Yeah.
but also incredibly liberating.
Okay.
And what's important to remember here is that Adler wasn't advocating for, being a jerk or intentionally pushing people away.
Right, yeah.
It's more about having the courage to live in alignment with your values, even if it means some people won't approve.
So it's not about, being disagreeable just for the sake of it.
Exactly.
It's more about, being true to yourself.
Precisely.
Even if it ruffles some feathers along the way.
You got it. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think about all those times when I've, held back from saying what I really think or pursuing something I was passionate about because I was afraid of what other people would think.
It's a common fear.
It is. And it's like, in those moments, I was giving those other people power.
You were?
Power over my choices, my decisions.
And that's what Adler called the price of seeking recognition.
Oh.
When we live our lives trying to please everyone else, we end up feeling trapped.
Yeah. It's like you're not even living your own life.
You're not. You're living according to their values, their expectations.
Right. It's like you're a puppet.
A puppet on strings.
Yeah.
Controlled by the opinions of others.
So how do we break free from those strings? How do we, cultivate that courage to be disliked?
It starts with understanding a key concept called the separation of tasks.
Okay, I think we touched on that a little bit earlier.
We did.
But can we go a little deeper into how that works in real life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about recognizing what you can control and what you can't.
Yep.
You have control over your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, but you cannot control how other people react or what they think of you.
Right. Okay.
Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a child who's refusing to study for an upcoming exam. You might feel frustrated, even angry.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And you might try to force them to study.
Okay.
But Adler would say that you're taking on a task that's not yours.
Okay, so it's the child's task to study.
It is. It's their responsibility to prepare for the exam and face the consequences if they choose not to.
So instead of nagging them or lecturing them,
Exactly.
you kind of step back.
You step back and let them learn from the natural consequences of their choices.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean being indifferent or neglecting your child.
Right.
It's about providing support and guidance while respecting their autonomy.
I see.
And this principle applies in other areas of life too.
Like in the workplace.
Exactly. Let's say you have a boss who's constantly micromanaging you
Ugh, I've been there.
and making unreasonable demands.
Yeah.
You might feel resentful and try to please them to avoid conflict.
It's tempting to do that.
It is, but you're essentially taking on their task.
So how would separating tasks look in that scenario?
It might involve setting boundaries, communicating your needs assertively, or even looking for a new job.
Right.
If this situation is untenable, the key is to focus on what you can control. Your effort, your communication, your choices.
And let go of trying to control the boss's behavior,
Precisely.
which is impossible.
Often, yes.
Yeah,
It sounds like separating tasks takes a lot of self-awareness
it does.
and courage.
But the payoff is worth it.
It is. When you stop trying to control other people's tasks,
Yeah.
you reclaim your power and freedom.
And that's where that courage to be disliked comes in. Because
Exactly.
if you're living according to your own values, you're inevitably going to run into people who disagree with you.
You will. Some people won't approve of your choices.
And that's okay.
It's not about seeking out dislike, of course.
Right.
But it's about accepting that it's an inevitable part of living authentically.
I see.
And remember, not everyone will dislike you.
Yeah, that's true.
And in fact, the people who truly matter, the ones who value authenticity, they'll respect you even more for having the courage to be yourself.
I'm starting to see how all of this ties into Adler's idea about happiness coming from contribution.
Ah, yes, the feeling of contribution.
Yeah, if we're always trying to please everyone, we're not really free to contribute
That's
in
true.
a way that feels meaningful.
You're not being true to yourself.
Right.
And that brings us to another crucial concept: horizontal relationships.
Okay.
Adler believed that healthier relationships are based on equality and respect.
So instead of those vertical relationships.
Like a boss and subordinate.
Right, parent-child.
Exactly, those hierarchical structures.
Yeah, he's saying we need to strive for something more horizontal,
Where everyone's on an equal footing.
where it's more of a partnership.
Precisely. And one of the biggest obstacles to horizontal relationships, praise.
But you saying that praising someone is a bad thing?
It can be, depending on the intention behind it.
Okay.
Think about how we typically use praise. We might praise a child for getting good grades.
Right.
Or a friend for losing weight.
Uh-huh.
But what message does that send?
That they did a good job.
On the surface, yes, but it also reinforces the idea that their worth is contingent on their performance or appearance.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
It's subtle, but it can have a profound impact.
So instead of focusing on the outcome,
Yes.
we should focus on the effort, the process.
Exactly. That's where encouragement comes in.
Okay.
Encouragement is about acknowledging someone's effort and progress, regardless of the outcome.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Instead of praising a child for being smart,
Okay.
they might say, "I noticed how hard you worked on that math problem. I'm proud of your effort."
So it's about recognizing their hard work.
Precisely. You're shifting the focus from being good to doing good.
That makes a lot of sense.
And how does this tie into horizontal relationships?
Yeah.
When we encourage others, we acknowledge their inherent worth, regardless of their achievements or status.
We're treating them as equals.
Exactly, as partners in the journey of life.
And one of the simplest forms of encouragement,
Is
gratitude.
precisely just saying thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Think about how it feels when someone expresses genuine gratitude for something you've done.
It feels good.
It does.
It makes you feel seen.
Appreciated,
Yeah.
valued. And that's what horizontal relationships are all about.
So instead of praising a child for cleaning their room,
Yes,
I might just say, thank you for helping out. I really appreciate it.
exactly.
And that gratitude, it extends beyond just our immediate circle, right?
It does.
To like the entire world.
Adler believed that we're all interconnected, from the people we interact with daily, to the trees that provide us with oxygen,
Okay.
to the very ground we walk on.
Are you suggesting we should be thanking the trees and the ground?
It might sound unconventional,
It does, a little bit.
but the point is to cultivate a sense of interconnectedness, to recognize that we're not separate from the world around us.
Oh,
It's about shifting from a sense of entitlement
okay.
to a sense of gratitude for everything that supports and sustains us.
It's like a perspective shift.
It is a profound shift.
From me to we.
Got it. Moving from a me-centered worldview
Yeah.
to a we-centered worldview.
And that's where that true happiness comes in.
According to Adler, yes.
It's not about stuff.
No, not about possessions
Achievement.
or accolades.
It's about connection.
Belonging, contributing to something larger than yourself.
Okay, but that could feel kind of overwhelming, right?
You can.
Like contributing to something larger than myself.
It's a big concept.
Where do I even begin?
Start small.
Okay.
Look for opportunities to contribute in your immediate surroundings.
My family, my work.
Your community. It could be helping a neighbor, volunteering at a local charity,
Right.
or simply being a good listener to a friend in need.
Those small acts, they make a difference.
They do. They ripple outwards, creating a positive impact beyond what we can see.
It's like that butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And more we focus on contributing to the well-being of others,
Yeah.
the more we cultivate that sense of community feeling,
That feeling of belonging,
of interconnectedness,
which is so essential to a happy life.
a fulfilling life.
Yeah. You know, it's funny when you talk about shifting from like, what can I get to what can I give? It really makes you think.
It's a powerful shift.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to get caught up in that idea that contributing has to be this big, grand thing.
Right. Like we have to make some massive impact.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where I think Adler's idea of the courage to be normal comes in.
Yes. The courage to be normal.
It's like, it's rejecting that pressure to be extraordinary and just embracing the value of just being you.
Absolutely. It's about finding fulfillment in the ordinary, everyday moments of life.
So instead of striving to be like, you know, the next Elon Musk.
Or Beyonce. It's about finding contentment in just being yourself.
Yeah, and being present in those moments.
Exactly.
You know, I used to think that being normal was kind of boring, even a little shameful.
It's a common misconception.
Yeah, but now I'm starting to see it as like a superpower.
It is, in a way.
Yeah, it's letting go of that need to prove yourself.
To constantly seek validation.
Yeah, just embracing who you are,
Flaws and all.
flaws and all.
That's true freedom.
It is incredibly liberating. But I think a lot of people struggle with that, right?
Of course, we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need to be extraordinary to be happy.
Yeah, and successful.
Right. It's all around us.
So how do we break free from that conditioning?
It starts with recognizing that those messages often stem from fear and insecurity.
Oh.
People who are truly comfortable in their own skin don't feel the need to constantly prove themselves.
Right. They're not seeking validation from the outside.
Exactly. They're content to simply be, to contribute in their own unique way.
It's like they're letting their actions speak for themselves.
Precisely.
I love that. It's like reclaiming the power that we've unknowingly given away.
To societal expectations.
The societal expectations
Right.
and that external validation.
It's about recognizing that we all have something valuable to offer. It might not be flashy or glamorous.
Right. But it's essential.
It's essential.
Speaking of essential, I feel like we haven't talked a lot about community feeling yet.
Right. It's a core concept in Adlerian psychology.
Yeah. Can we dive into that a bit?
Absolutely. Community feeling is that sense of belonging and connectedness to something larger than ourselves.
Okay, so it's like that feeling of having a place in the world.
Knowing that you belong.
Yeah.
That you're part of something meaningful.
Okay, I've definitely felt that in like certain groups or communities, but you mentioned earlier that it extends like to the entire universe.
That's right.
How?
It might sound a bit out there, but consider this. We're all made of the same stardust. We're all connected by the same laws of nature.
Yes.
And we all share this planet.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
So in a very real sense, we're all part of one giant cosmic community.
Whoa, that's a really big way to look at it.
It is. It's about shifting from a self-centered view to a more expansive, interconnected view.
And that shift in perspective can be really transformative, huh?
It can. It allows us to see beyond our individual needs and desires and recognize our interconnectedness with all living things.
Yeah, and that's where the contributing to something larger than ourselves comes in.
But exactly.
If we understand that we're all part of this giant web of life, then our actions have an impact on the entire community.
That's the idea.
Okay, I see that. But that can feel, again, kind of overwhelming. Where do you even begin?
You begin where you are.
Okay.
Look for opportunities to contribute in your immediate surrounding.
Family, work, community.
Exactly. It could be as simple as offering a helping hand to a neighbor, volunteering at a local charity, even just being a good listener to a friend in need.
Those small acts of kindness, They really do. They do make a difference.
They ripple outward, creating a positive impact.
And the more we do that,
The more we cultivate that community feeling
that sense of belonging,
of interconnectedness,
it's so essential to a happy life.
to a fulfilling life, a life of meaning.
You know, one of the things that I was really struck by when reading this book, The Courage to Be Disliked,
Yes,
was how practical it was.
I agree.
It's not just like abstract theory.
It provides concrete steps.
Yeah, it's about like real changes we can make.
In our daily lives.
Yeah.
And it starts with asking ourselves different questions.
Okay, so instead of what can I get?
Ask, what can I give?
How can I be special?
Becomes, how can I contribute?
It's like we're reframing our whole approach to life
From a self-centered perspective,
to one that's more outward focused.
focused on contributing.
Yeah, that's powerful. Well, this deep dive has really given me a lot to think about. What about you? Did anything in particular stand out to you from the book?
I think Adler's emphasis on action really resonated with me.
Yeah, he wasn't just about theorizing, right?
Exactly. When asked how to put community feeling into practice, he simply said, someone has to start. My advice is this: you should start.
So it's not about waiting for the world to change. It's about like taking responsibility.
Taking action
Yeah.
and making the choice to change ourselves.
And that change starts with a shift in perspective, right?
From what can I get to what can I give?
I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
A simple but powerful shift.
Yeah. Well, we've only just scratched the surface of Adlerian psychology,
There's so much more to explore.
but we hope this deep dive has given you a taste of, what Adler had to offer.
And how it can be applied.
Yeah. So if you're intrigued, keep exploring. His ideas might just change your life. They certainly changed mine.
If you were offered a choice between a life where everyone liked you and a life where you were free to be disliked, which would you choose?
That's a tough one. And what does that reveal about the kind of life you're truly seeking?
It's something to ponder.
It is. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep seeking those nuggets of wisdom that make life a little richer and a little more meaningful. We'll see you in the next deep dive.